Yeah.
giving your life to him. And, it's something that none of us deserve, none of us can earn. And he gives that freely because of his love. And I think that's what I'm most grateful for.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, keeping Jesus in the sports conversation. Here's your host for today's show, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
Tage Thompson, welcome to Sports Spectrum, buddy. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's good to see you. Good to talk to you. Let's start probably where we should always start, with God, with Jesus. Let's go there. Tell us about the importance of the Lord in your life and your relationship with God.
Yeah, and I think obviously Christ is first in everything you do, and it's easy to say that. It's a lot harder to live that out, but that's certainly something I try to do, walking in my faith, in every aspect of my life, and just try to live my life in a way that glorifies God, and that it's something where people can look at my life and say, "Oh, there's something a little different about him," or maybe they just see Jesus in my life, and just try to help others come to know Christ by the way I live out my faith.
When did you say yes and begin this journey with the Lord?
Well, I was raised in a Christian household. My mother and father, they're both they have strong faiths, and something where we're taught from a young age, and something that was instilled in us. But I think for me personally, when I first kind of understood the magnitude and the magnitude of the sacrifice that Christ made for us, I think I was around 13
Hmm.
when I gave my life to the Lord, and committed my life to Him and got baptized. And then from there, just trying to continue to grow and get closer to Him.
So at that age, you're also probably, I would imagine, being a professional hockey player now, you were probably getting into hockey, like youth hockey and sports. Was that a big thing for you as a kid?
Yeah, it was, and that's funny enough. Where I met a kid on my team. His father was a pastor, and we went to their church, and that's kind of where my faith, I would say, started to really turn from more of kind of just going through the motions and more of a title as being a Christian, to understanding the actual relationship part of walking with Christ, and like I said, that sacrifice that He made for all of us. And I think having that kid on my team and his father helped kind of um, just kind of flip that switch for me, I think.
When you turned pro and you started playing, or even in college, right, at UConn, and then you go pro, what was intersecting those two worlds, your faith and your love for the game of hockey? What was that like when you were first turning pro? Because I've talked to a lot of athletes, whether it's NFL players or NBA players or NHL players, and they've all said there's always a little bit of struggle because your walk with the Lord is important, but so is hockey, and you're kind of getting caught up in trying to achieve and accomplish and impress scouts and people. Like, what was that like for you, trying to live out both your faith but also be the best hockey player you can be?
Yeah, it's for sure a challenge. I think it's probably one of the toughest things that I've had to go through, is just being able to try to pursue my dream of being a professional hockey player, and all the things that requires, and the time and the sacrifice. And sometimes you can get wrapped up in all that, and you start to look forward at your future, and you want to make plans for yourself. And I think for me, when I started to do that, that's kind of where you run into roadblocks, and things may not work out the way you want them or the way you see it. And I think when you take a step back and kind of just realize that God's in control, He has a plan for you, and His plan is far better than anything that we could ever imagine. And you just kind of give it over to Him and sit back and enjoy the ride. I think that's where it takes all the stress and the worry out of everything, and it allows you to just enjoy the game, enjoy the journey too, because there are going to be ups and downs. There's going to be challenges, but when those challenges come, I think that it's God providing an opportunity somewhere in the future. So that's kind of the way I've looked at it. And obviously, I think too, the way professional sports is there's ups and downs no matter who you are. So you have to be prepared for them. And I think for me, that's kind of something that I learned at a younger age, having gone through a lot of adversity younger. It's definitely helped prepare me for certain situations I've been in.
What do you remember about October 4th, 2017, making your NHL debut against the Pittsburgh Penguins?
I remember it being very special. Obviously, it's a dream that you have as a little kid, but I think what made it so special is the fact that both my parents got to be there.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, he coaches professionally, so his schedule usually doesn't allow for him to see most of my games in person or live at all. Usually has to go back and rewatch them. So for him and my mom to be in attendance, and just all the sacrifices that they've made for me growing up, it's kind of goes back to that sacrifice that Christ made for you.
Hmm.
You don't realize it or appreciate it until you're a little older. At least for me, all the things that they did for me, you kind of overlook it when you're younger. And I think when you get older, you realize how much of a sacrifice they made, the time, the money, doing all these things just so that you could try to live out your dream. And so for me to be able to play in my first NHL game and for them to both witness it, I think what made it so special for me was knowing how much it probably meant to them.
Go back to even before that, you mentioned the sacrifices that your parents made. Give an example, right? Like give an example of a week period or a month period that it truly, I think a lot of people who are in this space with kids who play sports, I think they see that, but some don't, and some don't understand the sacrifice that
Yeah.
truly is made, whether it's time, money, all of that, to make sure that their son Tage can have the best chance on achieving his goal or harnessing your skills to get better and be the best that you can be. So explain that, like when you say sacrifice, what an example of that would be.
Yeah, well, there's a few that stick out. I mean, I think one of the first ones that I noticed right off the bat is, my mom. So my dad played hockey and he coaches professionally, like I said. So
Yeah.
he was on the road quite a bit, which in itself is a sacrifice. And myself being a father now, you see how time away from your kids it's terrible. Like you always want to be with them. So for him to have to be on the road and away from my brother and I'm sure is something that was very tough for him to have to do. But then you look at the other side of it. Now my mom's got to take up, all the work, and she's the one driving us to tournaments. And my brother is 2 years apart from me, so we were never on the same team. So we're always going to different tournaments, and the tournaments are usually 4 or 5 hours away. But I think one thing that stuck out is when we lived in Illinois, we lived in Peoria, Illinois, and all of our practices and our tournaments mostly were in Chicago, which is 3 hours away. And
Yeah.
Our last year there, I tried out for a team out in Chicago and made the team. So every day, I think it was maybe 4 days a week, we're practicing out in Chicago, and we lived in Peoria. So she was making the drive 3 hours there, 3 hours back for four days a week. And then we were there on the weekends too. So 6 out of 7 days, she's
Wow.
driving three hours there and back just for me to go practice and play, whatever it was, U12 hockey. So something that probably not a lot of parents would do for their kids, but I've been very blessed to have two very loving and dedicated parents that want to see my dreams come true, and they've definitely sacrificed a lot to make it happen for me.
Yeah. So you hear that sacrifice, Tage Thompson, and then you kind of fast forward a little bit to this past year, 2022, 2023, and it's your best year as a pro. 47 goals, very consistent, by the way. 47 goals, 47 assists, and an NHL All-Star selection. What did the Lord teach you as you look back on all you accomplished this season? Because there's obviously a lot that goes into leading up to having a season like you just had, and even the one before last year, if you will, the year before this past year was your breakout season. But what's a lesson that you see God kind of teaching you as you start to have more success on the ice?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different lessons that I've learned and that I've been taught throughout the course of my career and my pro career in particular. But I think the biggest thing for me that sticks out is patience. It goes back to kind of what I was saying, is the balancing of those two different things, your walk and your faith and your career in hockey, those two things intersect. And a lot of times, like I said, I get wrapped up in trying to force my will on my future. I want this to happen. I want this. So I'm going to plan to be here in X amount of years. And I think God just sits back and laughs when you try to do things like that. And I think that's something he's taught me is, patience. I've had to go through season-ending injuries. I've went through, first 2 years of poor performance where I thought I would be a certain player and I wasn't. And I think just kind of battling with that mentally, it was just something where I just kind of, gave up that battling and just kind of gave it all to him and said, hey, whatever you got planned for me, whether I'm a superstar, whether I'm a nobody, whether I play in the East Coast, AHL, the NHL, whatever happens, I just want to live my life for you and let you kind of guide me where you want me. And I think when I did that, it kind of just, like I said, took all the worry, the stress, the pressure off of my game, and I could just go out and enjoy it and have fun and kind of realize that, this is an extreme blessing. I mean, how many people get to play hockey and call that their job? So
Yeah.
It's just given me a greater appreciation for all the things I've been given in life. And I think those things that you go through, there's always different ways to look at it. And I think when you have Christ living in your heart, I think it always shines towards the positives.
I think you mentioned that word patience, and it made me think because you pretty quickly, we talked about October 4th, 2017, right? You make your NHL debut. Your parents are there. Just go about a year ahead, like not even less than a year. And suddenly in July of 2018, you're traded to where you now are. You're traded to Buffalo. The Lord directs, if you will, your steps all the way to Buffalo. Talk about that a little bit, because that's when I think for a lot of athletes that we talk to, they realize, oh, this is fun and I'm getting paid and this is all great, and you work hard for it. And suddenly you realize there's a business side of the game of hockey. Obviously you can look back now and say it seems to have worked out thus far. You're having a lot of success with Buffalo, but at that time, what were you thinking? What was kind of the thought process in 2018 when you were traded?
Yeah, I mean, a lot goes through your head when you get traded. It's kind of mixed emotions. You're sad, you're with a team and you thought they wanted you, and now they don't. And but that means another team wants you, and you get an opportunity, a fresh start. So it's kind of those mixing of emotions. And I think luckily for me, my dad played, so he's been in that situation before, so he was kind of able to guide me through that. And I think that's something too where, once again, you just kind of you turn to God and say, hey, I know you got a plan for me and I trust it. So that was something for me where I just tried to embrace the opportunity, and I was excited for it. And then you take a couple years forward, and the first 2 years going to Buffalo didn't really go as planned. First season didn't really play well, and didn't get a whole lot of opportunity, up and down, and between the minors, in and out of the lineup. And then you think, all right, well, next year is going to be better, and then I have a season-ending injury, so it's just like kind of felt like one thing after another, and just couldn't really feel like I could get myself going as far as where I wanted my career to go. And so I think it's just one of those things. And God's got a plan. You just got to be patient and trust it. And that was something that I really tried to do during those times, and just approach each day on trying to get better. And that if I did that, everything would take care of itself.
Do you remember watching your dad play when you were little?
Not a whole lot. Usually, I mean, the most I remember is more of his coaching days. I remember a little bit from when he played in Providence, which I believe was his last season.
Mm-hmm.
But my brother and I were pretty young, so I don't remember a whole lot. But I know how he played. So, and he still carries himself like that. He's very intense. So, but no, I never really got to watch him.
But I would imagine there's been so much. I mean, you have your own personal coach when you really look at it, when your dad is a former player. I remember when we had Josh Manson on the podcast, he's with the Avalanche now, and he talked about his dad playing and being an enforcer and just the lessons that he was able to just learn and pick his brain, in the midst of trying to grow as a hockey player. I have to imagine you have your own coaches and your own teachers and mentors and all those people, but your dad, I have to imagine, is like, it's like God's blessing to say, oh, you got one right in the house here, someone who can help you. Sometimes though, that's hard to separate. Was that hard for you to separate dad from coach? Because he wanted to be dad, I'm sure too. So there's a few questions I guess I have in there, but what was it like to have dad as that former player in your life?
Yeah, I mean, to start off, I think, like you said, it's a blessing for sure. And I think it gives you a leg up on a lot of kids growing up. Just that inside information, he's been through it. He's made the NHL. He's played. He knows what it takes to get there. He knows what scouts and coaches are looking for at that next level. So to just be able to have kind of that mental approach to certain things in your game, and then obviously he can dissect the game really well, and he knows what he's looking for in my game. So he's always trying to help me improve. But like you said, it is kind of that balancing act, and I think more for him than me. I always looked at him as dad and never really as coach, but I think for him, he did a really good job of separating himself as coach and father. He never coached my brother or I on any team, but after every game, he always had something to say about our game or how we played, which sometimes it's not what you want to hear, but he does it because he loves us and it comes from the right place. But yeah, it's definitely been a blessing for sure, but not easy at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking to Tage Thompson here from the Buffalo Sabres, all-star Tage Thompson. What was that like to be selected and have an experience like that to be an NHL all-star?
Yeah, it was really cool. I think not something I really expected, something I always hoped and dreamed that would happen. And I think I just kind of got out to a pretty hot start to start off the season, and just kind of was able to keep that pace for a while, and to get selected, it was really cool. I mean, to be named with all the guys that are listed in the All-Star game are all the guys that you grew up watching and envision playing with and against someday. So sometimes you gotta kind of pinch yourself to realize how big of an honor it was, and a little unfortunate I wasn't able to go with the injury, but
yeah,
hopefully one day there'll be another opportunity for that. So
yeah, but even just to have that honor, like you say, I mean that's that's got to be, it's got to kind of feel, I don't know if it's confirmation from God, but just kind of feel like, okay, you work so hard, you go back to all those 3-hour rides that mom's given you. And obviously I think the ultimate goal is to make the league. Then you want to, be an all-star, to be the best player you can. And certainly you want to win a cup at some point or multiple cups, but that has to feel like almost like confirmation a little bit, like, yeah, this is just, it's not the end, but it's a nice little honor in the midst of all the hard work that you put in.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think it's a rewarding feeling knowing all the things I've gone through to get up to this point. And I think even take a step back and look at the year prior, I think was in my eyes a great year, and something I was very proud of. And I think, you fast forward to this last year, I think it's kind of just God's way of saying, hey, I got more in store for you. It's kind of cool just to see how blessed I have been, and all the little gifts and stuff that he's been able to give me. And I think it kind of shows you that nothing's out of reach when you got Christ in your life.
Go back a little bit before being named an all-star. It was the beginning of this past year. And you're in the city of Buffalo, and people kind of know where I'm going probably with this. We all witnessed the DeMar Hamlin incident that happened on Monday night with the Bills and the Bengals game. I'm just curious from your perspective. I don't even know if you're a football fan, but more from being a pro athlete, because you understand every time you go out on the ice and you have a game, or every time you step on the court or step on the field, there's always risk involved, right? You don't think about that, but there's always risk. I said, when you saw that happen, and this was a guy who was, right in your neck of the woods there, what was kind of going through your mind? How did that affect you as a pro athlete and even as a believer?
Yeah, it was crazy. We were in Washington, and a lot of us, I think there was probably 5 or 6 of us in one hotel room, and we were just watching the game, and we watched it live and saw it happen. And that was pretty insane. Like you said, the fact, just the sporting community, but then the fact that it was Buffalo, and kind of hit a little closer to home. And yeah, it's scary when you see something like that, and it kind of like gives you that pit in your stomach, and you hope and pray that he's okay. And then it kind of makes you look in the mirror and say, well, that could have been me. It's one of those things, like you said, where every time you step on the ice, there's a risk. You never know what's going to happen. And I think when those things do happen, it gives you a greater appreciation for life itself and how precious it is, and that our lives could be over at any given moment. And I think that kind of, for me at least, gives you a greater ability to prioritize what's most important in your life, and that is your relationship with Christ. And I think it was amazing to see all the people that showed their faith throughout that. People praying on TV, just all the people, praying and showing their faith during this time. And obviously God's amazing and works miracles, and everything was good with DeMar. And I think then you go into the game the following night in Washington, and just kind of the numbers that were in the stats at the end of the game that none of us realized until the game was over. But all the threes throughout the game, and DeMar obviously wears number 3. So it was pretty wild to see. And I think that's obviously a God sent thing. And there's no other way you could write that up.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool moment in the midst of a tough situation, at least initially, and then certainly a miracle with all that's transpired since. When you're going through a long season, talk about being a follower of Christ and growing in your faith. Obviously, you want to be the best hockey player, but what's it look like to be the best follower of Christ that you can be during the season? Discipleship, Bible studies, prayer. Is there anything like that you're able to be involved with? Obviously, going to church is difficult because you're traveling so much and you're all over the place. But what does that look like during a long season for you to stay grounded in your faith and connected to God?
Yeah, it's really tough. Honestly, that's probably something that I fight with the most, is just being able to consistently walk with Christ and to not get drawn away. I mean, we live in a culture that, it's so easy to get sucked into. And we have a chaplain, we have a team chaplain, and we have a lot of guys that go to our chapels. So that's something that's helped me stay pretty grounded, throughout the course of the season. And in the summers, I try to go to church as much as possible, just because we have a lot of time off in the summers.
Yeah.
But I think that, the chapel is something that's been great for me. I had chapel in college, and it's great that Hockey Ministries is so involved in the NHL, and I hope they continue to grow. And I think it's a great thing, but it's a tough walk. I mean, especially, there's a lot of guys that don't have a faith, and you have so much access to, things that can draw you to sin. And I'm not perfect, for sure. I mess up all the time, but it's nice to have guys around you that can hold you accountable and that you can walk in faith together.
Last summer, July 1st, I believe, or no, early July of 2022, from what I saw on social media, I could be way off here, but you became a dad to baby Brooks. And then a month later, you signed that big extension to remain in Buffalo. Lots of blessings happening all around at that time. But becoming a dad, there's nothing like that. What was that like for you, becoming a father, and maybe even how you saw God as father now that you're suddenly becoming a dad to a little one yourself?
Yeah, it is amazing. It's the greatest gift you can get, I think. I didn't think I would be able to love anything as much as I love my son. And
yeah,
I mean, that gives me so much greater appreciation for the love that my parents have for me. And then, I mean, obviously in scripture, like, it talks about the love the Father has for us, and it's unfathomable. And if it's so unfathomable how much more he loves me than I love my son, I can't even comprehend it. So I think, like I said, it just gives that greater appreciation for, the love and the mercy and grace that God has for us. And it's been a blast. I mean, watching him grow, you're gone for a week on the road, you come back, it's a different kid. So,
yeah.
You just want to be with him all the time.
And then you get to sign that big contract and stay in the great city of Buffalo. What's it been like to be around those fans? I mean, we hear about it a lot from the NFL side with the Bills, but Sabre fans are passionate, and Buffalo fans in general, even Buffalo people, I think, are some of the best people you'll ever come across. What's it been like to play for those fans?
Yeah, it's been great. I just love the fact that it's a blue collar city. Just a lot of great people, hardworking people. And I think that's what makes it so fun to play for them. They just want you to work, and they'll show you respect, and they'll cheer for you. And I think obviously they haven't had a good track history in Buffalo, and we're trying to change that there. And I think we have a good group of guys that play hard and they want to do well for the city, and I think the city sees that and they're starting to kind of get on board with what we're trying to do there. So it's been fun, and I've heard a lot of stories about back in the day when they were in playoffs. It was something that you can't really describe, and I see how Bills Mafia is, so it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you see, listen, the Buffalo Bills football team was not, I mean, they didn't make the playoffs for almost 20 years. So, and now look at where they are. So maybe you can be a part of the same kind of resurgence with the Sabres, which would be pretty cool to look back in a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And remember those times. So let me close with this, because you've been very generous with your time. When you think about gratitude, we ask this question a lot to our guests. When you think about gratitude, right? And we've listed all of the things that I think you're thankful for in terms of becoming a dad and being a husband and certainly being a professional hockey player and your parents. But when you think of gratitude to God, what are you most thankful for to him in your life right now?
I'm most thankful for him sending his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross, because I sin every single day. No matter how hard I try, we all fall short of the perfection that only Jesus Christ could live out here on earth, and then die for all of our sins. And the only way through the gates is by accepting him and giving her to him. And it's something that none of us deserve, none of us can earn, and he gives that freely because of his love. And I think that's what I'm most grateful for. Yeah,
no, that's so well said. I forgot to ask you, I wanted to ask one more question to you. When you're in the locker room, like, what's it like? Who are, are there guys and a couple players that are believers that you can kind of, not just cling to? I mean, you want to be friends and the best teammate you can to everybody, but there's always these guys that keep you accountable, that iron sharpens iron. Have you been able to find that in the league, that now that you've been in the game for, 5+ years playing in the NHL?
Yeah. And on our team in particular, I think we've got a lot of guys. Like I said, I think we have maybe seven or eight guys that attend chapel pretty regularly.
Great.
And yeah, guys that are strong in their faith, guys that are still growing and trying to learn more. And I think that's great. I think that's something that I've, prayed for in the past, is to be, surrounded by, strong, godly men that try to walk their life, in a way that God would be proud of. And I think that's something that he's given me, and hopefully it continues to grow. And but yeah, it's been great for me, and I'm sure a lot of the other guys on the team as well.
No, that's great. He is Tage Thompson. Tage, thanks, man. Congratulations on a great season this past year. Certainly making the All-Star team, and then obviously becoming a dad, and lots of great things happening in your life with the new contract. But really, just best wishes as you go forward, and hopefully we'll cross paths again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for watching today on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you click that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos. And if you want more stories on sports and faith, check out our website, sportsspectrum.com.